That's the stuff. The best part of waking up. I should try that again. The best part of waking up is earth being in your cup. Please don't sue me. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Robuilt. Y'all, I am feeling so happy right now. I just wanted to thank everybody for all of your support on last week's video, where I announced that I am a full-time YouTuber. And yes, it is 2 a.m. right now, but there is an upside to this, and that is that today's episode is brought to you by Earth Bean Coffee. But a little bit more on them later. As a real estate consultant, meaning someone that teaches people how to start their Airbnb business or their glamping business or just jumping into the real estate game in general, I think one of the more common questions I get is, hey, what should I do first? How should I jump into the world of real estate? Or how can I get into real estate if I don't have that much money to purchase an investment property? And to a lot of those people, I typically tend to recommend house hacking because I think it's a really quick way to kickstart your wealth in that it allows you to save your cash very quickly, and thus the more cash you save, the more you can start applying to more real estate investments, right? Let's get to the basics, right? What is house hacking? I'm sure I could probably look up an official definition out there. I'm sure there is an official definition out there, but I'll tell you what it means to me. House hacking is whenever you rent a portion of your property. Could be a spare bedroom, could be a basement, could be a murder closet, could be an ADU in your backyard, and you use that money to subsidize your mortgage. That's it. It really is that simple of a concept. I think a lot of people kind of overthink getting into real estate, and they think that they have to save up 20% and get this monster of a deal that cash flows hundreds or thousands of dollars every single month. And while that's really awesome, it's just not always the best move for a lot of people. A lot of people want to jump into investment properties but still rent an apartment, and that's okay. But for me, I personally think that the moment that you can stop paying a mortgage or the moment that you can heavily subsidize a mortgage, that's whenever your whole financial situation begins to unlock. So I'll kind of talk you through how I got into house hacking and how it started to kind of, change my life, which is something that I didn't really think about until I started planning this video, because I never really mathed out how much of my mortgage has been paid by other people, right? Friends, roommates, Airbnb tenants, and everything in between. When I was 26, my wife and I moved to Kansas City. We had about $80,000 in student loan debt, and we were renting a small apartment that was about $800 for about 800 square feet. Roughly when the lease was ending, we were thinking about buying a house. We bought a $159,000 house. We put down 3.5%, which came out to about $5,500. It's not like we had that saved. We actually got I think $4,000 back in taxes that year specifically, and we really cobbled together that last $1,500 to $2,000. But roughly speaking, our mortgage on that was about $1,100. And we had a friend that was moving to town and needed a place to stay. And so we were like, hey, why don't you come live with us? We'll charge you, cheap rent, and it's a win-win for everybody. We ended up working out a deal, charging him $400 a month, which may not sound like a lot of money, but I cannot stress to you how much $400 was to me 5 years ago. It's just crazy to think how far we've come. And I'm just so thankful to say that we've really built something for ourselves. And I really do attribute a lot of our wealth and where we are in life to house hacking, because it was through charging $400 of rent that I realized, man, it's so awesome when someone else helps me pay my mortgage, right? So fast forward a little bit, we moved to LA, and within 6 months of renting at this apartment, I was like, okay, I don't care what it takes. We're gonna buy a house in LA. And, my wife was like, are you sure we can afford this? And I was like, absolutely not, we can't, but we're gonna make it work. We ended up putting an offer on a $624,000 house that had a 300 square foot studio underneath the main house. And I told my wife, look, I think if we buy this house, I've heard about this Airbnb thing. What could go wrong by letting strangers live in our house? I think we can make between $2,000 and $3,000 every single month. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what happened. Our mortgage when we first started out with PMI came out to about $4,400. And that meant that renting our apartment for $2,000 to $3,000 on Airbnb was roughly 50 to 75% of our mortgage. And this is where it really just started to the wheels started to turn for me. We were making between $2,000 and $3,000 in my studio apartment under my house. Again, a 300 square foot studio, technically it was 279 square feet in Los Angeles on Airbnb, was making $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Again, this is at the very beginning of my Airbnb career, and I was like, oh my goodness, what if I had 10 Airbnbs one day? Wouldn't that be really cool? It's really cool because I actually have about 10 Airbnbs now, and I don't know, I guess I just realized that I hit that goal. Coffee break. So after a year of riding this gravy train, a friend of mine ended up moving to LA, and it was the same type of thing. He needed a place to stay. I was like, hey, come live with me. We'll give you cheap rent. It'll be a win-win for both of us. So he ended up paying us about $800 a month. So on a great month, on a perfect month, I was making $3,000 downstairs in my studio apartment, $800 a month on rent from my roommate, which came out to $3,800, which meant that personally, out of my pocket, I was paying $600 to live in a $624,000 house. A year later, I built a tiny house in my backyard. Then my friend and roommate ended up moving into the back house, and he was paying me $1,500 to live in there. It was really about this time where my $4,400 mortgage was pretty much a wash when you considered the money that I was making in my tiny house in my backyard and in my studio apartment. But I say all of this because I want to bring up that $4,400 is a lot of money. Like a lot of money every single month for a copywriter in advertising and a teacher. Right? It's not like we had $4,400, but I was willing to take a risk that, if I could subsidize my mortgage by having other tenants on my property, then things would be okay. Now, fast forward to today, I've done the math, and after adding up all the money that I've made from Airbnb guests, from long-term tenants, from roommates on that specific house, I have been paid anywhere between $160,000 and $180,000. And all of this money I've made through house hacking, meaning that I now had between $160,000 and $180,000 to apply to other purchases in my life, right? Other rental properties, to build tiny houses in Joshua Tree, or establish glam sites in Arizona, or build a tiny house village here in Tennessee. Right? It is money that I have used to fuel my financial situation. And really quick, before we dive into all the approaches that you can take yourself, if you're finding any value in this video, if you like what I have to say, if this inspires you to maybe try a house hack, feel free to hit the little like button right over here. So I never know. I should probably find out, but hit the like button, consider subscribing, definitely hit that notification bell, and maybe drop me a comment. Tell me something cute. I want to talk about why house hacking is a good option for newbie investors or people just wanting to get into the real estate game. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is I want you to stop paying your mortgage, right? Like for me, not paying $4,000 a month really started to compound for me, right? I wasn't losing sleep at night anymore over my finances, which was really huge for me because I really stressed a lot about money. And in those tough times, there were a few things that I turned to: my wife, John Mayer, and coffee. Which brings us to today's sponsor, Earth Bean Coffee. Now, Earth Bean could not come at a better time because it's 2:37 a.m. right now, but also really been trying to think of ways to kind of up my short-term rental game. And one small and inexpensive way to do that is by offering premium coffee to all of your guests. Earth Bean Coffee is a certified organic roaster in downtown LA, and they only roast organic and fair trade certified coffees. And I don't know about you, but every single trade I've ever made has been fair, so that means a lot to me. And boop. They plant a tree for every single bag sold through one tree planted. So basically, if you don't buy Earth Bean Coffee, you hate Earth.
And I'm afraid Earth has been canceled.
Aww. They would probably never let me say that, but I'm gonna say it. They also sell these really cool tumblers. I like to call them tumbly tumblies. And when you buy one of these things, they give you free drip coffee for a year and $1 off any drink from their menu for life. Because they're a sustainable company, and they are called Earth Bean. So truly, I think they mean it, guys. I think they named their coffee Earth Bean Coffee, and they were like, we mean this. We mean that we like Earth, I get good vibes from them. So if you want to support Earth Bean Coffee and the Earth in general, then you can use my promo code Robuilt for 15% off of your order. Now that I'm caffeinated, let's talk about house hacking and the different approaches that you can take. I'm gonna try to give an approach for pretty much everyone out there, whether you have a lot of money, whether you're renting, whether you wanna buy a house, and everything in between. Let's start very basic here with a simple home purchase. We can use my first house hacking situation as a reference here. So say that you wanna buy a house in between $150,000 to $250,000. Let's say that it's a 3-2. That will give you plenty of options to consider. A, you can live in the main bedroom, and then you can also bring on roommates to help pay for your mortgage. So in my example, I was charging a friend $400, which honestly could have been $600 to $800, but we'll go with $400 now. My mortgage at the time was about $1,000, so that $400 took away 40% of my mortgage. Now, if I had rented another room in my house at another $400, for example, that'd be $800. Meaning at the end of the day, I could have spent $200 out of my own pocket instead of $1,000. Now, of course, there are bills and other expenses to consider, but hopefully the wheels are kind of turning here. Now, that's not necessarily a game-changing amount of money for some people, but maybe it is. For me, that $400 $1,500 that I was making was a life-changing amount of money at the time because we were so broke. Now, obviously we are in the COVID era and maybe you don't want to split a house with roommates or anything like that. And there are still other options that you can consider. In Kansas City, for example, the Midwest, very known for basements and definitely very well known for finished basements too. So let's say that you buy a house with an attached granny flat or a finished basement or an ADU, or you buy a house with the intention of adding one of those things to your property. Now, in the early stages of my LA home, when I wanted to build a tiny house, I didn't necessarily have a way to pay for that, right? But having a roommate in my house at that time paying me $800 with a commitment to then move into my tiny house ADU and paying me $1,500 at least helped me cope with the price tag and ease my apprehension a bit, knowing that he would help pay for that note. So whether you want to rent a room, 2 rooms in your house, a basement, an attic, a swing space, a bonus room, a tiny ADU, or you can even get crazy with it and put an Airstream on your driveway or an RV on your driveway. Granted, make sure that follows all zoning laws and you have the space and it looks good and everything like that. There are so many ways that you can break into house hacking. Now I want to talk about a house hacking option that I think more people would be on board with, because again, some of those other options not completely private, but this would be by owning a multi-family property. And what I mean by that is by owning a duplex or a triplex in which you live in one unit and you rent out the other unit or the other 2 units. Now there are a couple of approaches that you can take on this, right? You can either rent the other unit out long-term to a long-term renter if you don't want to deal with the hustle and bustle of short-term rentals, or on the flip side of that, you can convert it into a short-term rental and use it as an Airbnb. A long-term rental is going to be a solid 12-month lease where you don't really have to put up with as much turnover and you have a tenant that pays you on time every single month. It's secure. It's what people have been doing for hundreds of years. On the flip side of that, you can list it on Airbnb. If you're the kind of person that always has people in town, friends, family, then this is a really good option for you, right? Because for the most part, you'll make a lot more money on the short-term rental side of things, and you can choose to block off certain dates in your calendar to allow for friends and family to come visit. There are pros and cons to this. Pro, you have access to your unit whenever you want it. You can close it off for maintenance. You can go in, you can make repairs anytime that you want. You can go and make renovations. You can go and paint a wall. You can remodel your kitchen, whatever you want to do. You have 100% access to your property when you have it listed as a short-term rental, because you're able to control when your calendar is booked. In many cases with a long-term tenant, with a duplex or a triplex, they either pay for most of your mortgage, if not all of it. If not, you even make a little bit of profit on there. But if you make your other unit a short-term rental, not only do you have access to it whenever you want, but you can oftentimes maybe even double or triple your mortgage. Let's look at a duplex, for example, okay? I'm gonna go to Redfin here. So let's go ahead and just start where I'm from, Houston, Texas. Good starting point. Texas, Steve, Texas.
Texas. It's up there. Texas.
Cool, so we'll go into multifamily, go into a part of town that, I would live in. Cool, so this place is $330,000. It's 3 baths, it's 2,700 square feet. Looks like it is a duplex plus garage apartment. So this is a great example. One is a 1-bedroom, 1 bath. Another one is a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. And then they have a garage apartment that's a 1-bedroom, 1 bath, like a studio space. So let's go ahead and place this into a website called Rentometer to kind of approximate what this 1-bedroom could bring in from a rent standpoint. So you enter in your address here. Let's say that you want to live in the 2-bedroom, 1 bath because let's say you have a partner, dogs, you need the space. So if that's the case, you're going to want to rent out your 1-bedroom, 1 bath and your garage apartment, which is a 1-bedroom, 1 bath. So we'll go ahead and put 1-bedroom, 1 bath in here and analyze address, and let's see what it pulls up. So the average rent is $1,129, right? Let's say that you're going to bring in roughly $2,000 in rents from the garage apartment and from the 1-bedroom, 1 bath house. On this property specifically, it's $330,000, right? So let's go down to the mortgage calculator. This mortgage calculator with the 20% down payment, $66,000, puts you at a mortgage of $1,871. Now, not everyone has 20%. If you're gonna be doing a house hack and this is gonna be your primary residence, you can actually get in for as little as 3.5%. There's some pluses and minuses to this, and that's that you're gonna have to pay PMI, but that's the cost of doing business. Not everyone has 20% of a down payment hanging around. I certainly did, and I got in at 3.5% in Los Angeles myself. So as you can see, even with 3.5% down, this property comes out to $2,298 a month, meaning that if you're bringing in $2,000 of profits from that garage apartment and from that 1-bedroom, 1 bath unit, then you're only paying about $300 to live in a pretty decent triplex in a part of town that I think is going to appreciate over the next couple of years. But that's just one side of it, right? Let's analyze it from a short-term rental perspective and see exactly how much you can make on Airbnb as well. Great, so for this we're gonna use airdna.co. Now this is just an initial gut check, and same thing with Rentometer, like take it with a grain of salt, use that as your initial analysis, but you're still gonna have to do some research on your end. If you're thinking about getting into the house hacking world and you're like, you wanna consider your options, consider booking a consultation. Like we can run through options that might work for you, that will work in your budget, and kind of analyze if a deal would be better for a long-term play or a short-term play. So looking here at AirDNA, we're using a tool here called Rentalizer. It's actually one of the only free tools on AirDNA. Everything else is a subscription service, but that's okay that it's the only free tool because honestly, to me, it's the most important tool on the website. Airbnb hosts, if you disagree with me, let me know. So let's go ahead and do a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, since that's what we would be putting on Airbnb. And let's say we'll put it down for 4 guests. Relatively speaking, that's $16,044 a year. Divide that by 12, and you'll have a monthly Airbnb gross of $1,337. Now, since there's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath and a garage studio apartment, we'll just kind of multiply that by 2, about $2,600, like roughly. I mean, it could be anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. As I said, AirDNA is kind of like my initial comp, but if you really furnished it well and you offered a great, kind of package for your guests and everything like that, I think that is well within reason to make anywhere from $2,600 to $3,000 on something like this. So in that case, it would make more sense to rent it short term because you actually make more money that way. Now, with that said, what I really like about house hacking it this way is the access, right? Even if you make the same amount of money as you do on a long-term rental, that's okay because A, you're not really having to pay a mortgage. I mean, you might have to pay a couple $100s, but B, you have access to both of those units to let your friends, family stay in there. You could shoot YouTube videos in there. You could use it to cure salami and all of your meats. I mean, literally anything you want to do in those apartments, you can do because they're yours and you have the option to do that. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there are a bunch of different models and structures that you can approach to house hacking that I think really can fit just about anyone's lifestyle that wants to get into the real estate world. Just very quickly, I want to talk about how much money you might possibly need to do this. If you're doing this as an owner-occupied unit, you could get in for as little as 3.5%. So on that $330,000 house that we were just looking at, that would be $11,550 is what you would need to get into that house, assuming that your debt to income ratio checks out and you can qualify and you have income and all that jazz. But roughly, let's call it about $13,000 with some closing costs and all that kind of stuff. Like that's what you need to get into a situation in which other people pay your mortgage. I think it's pretty good. I think that's an easy and obtainable goal to work up to. Now, obviously this gets a lot harder depending on if you live in California or New York or anything like that. But for most of the population in the country, I think it's a very obtainable goal. And what I really like about house hacking and owner occupied units is that since it's going to be your primary residence, your interest rate is going to be much lower than if it was an investment property or even a second home. Right now we're looking at interest rates under 3%, which is historically low. So you could get in and lock in a very low interest rate, occupy it, save money every single month. And the beautiful thing about this is after you've done it for a year or two and you've saved up enough money, you can then move on to another residence and convert that into a rental property where you start renting every single thing. You can do one of them short-term rental, 2 of them long-term rental, vice versa. I mean, the world is your oyster in terms of how you want to structure that specific property. For me, I no longer live in LA. I have my main house, my tiny house in my backyard, and a studio apartment underneath. The studio apartment right now rents for $1,500 a month long-term to a long-term tenant. My tiny house right now rents long-term on Airbnb, which is more money than a traditional 12-month lease, but still not as much as a regular short-term rental, but that's okay. It's still a decent amount. That comes out to about $2,300 a month. And then I have my main house that I lived in, but since I don't live there anymore, I can now Airbnb that. And it's rented this month and next month for $4,400. So let's add that up. Well, honestly, it's probably already right here, but for my own edification, $4,400 plus $1,500 plus $2,300. We're looking at about $8,200. So subtract my mortgage and my expenses on that right now. Roughly, we're looking at a profit of about $3,700, plus or minus a couple $100 on both sides. I'd have to really sit down and work with it. But as you can see, I've converted that into a rental, and now on a yearly basis, that property is actually producing $44,400 for me in profit. We won't get into taxes. That'll be its own video at another point. If that's something that interests you, let me know. But $44,000 is now what I cash flow in profit on my house in Los Angeles, California. I think that's a really big win. And I honestly think that you don't even necessarily need to buy to get into house hacking. I mean, I have a friend right now who rented a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in LA. He rents the other room anywhere from $75 to $95 a night. So we'll take the average of that, about $85 a night. And on a bad month, he grosses about $1,700. And on a perfect month, which is pretty common out there, about $2,500, and his rent is $2,500. So he actually doesn't pay a mortgage, and at times he even has a loft that he rents as well. So he actually profits by renting out different rooms in his apartment. So that's also an option for you too if you can't qualify for a mortgage or anything like that. That's okay. There are other ways to get into this. Now, everyone may not want to do that right now because of everything going on in the world, but it's still an option for you, right? So whether you want to own, whether you want to rent, whether you want to give up space in your house or an apartment or a granny flat, or you want to do a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, the world is your oyster, okay? And as I said, for me, it really felt like my wealth really started to grow exponentially the moment I stopped paying my mortgage. So I don't know. That's it. That's all I got today. That is the basics of house hacking. I'd like to do a series on these and break down different deals and show you different approaches to house hacking. I hope that this is somewhat helpful, and if it pushes you to house hack or want to house hack, let me know in the comments below. I get a lot of joy by people kind of taking the leap into the real estate world from anything that I say, because I really had to learn about this stuff on my own, and it was harder because of that. So if I made your life easier in any way, then I feel like my job is done. So thank you for watching today's episode of Robuilt. More to come, more content to come. I'm gonna try to do 2 videos a week. I don't know about that. We'll see. But 6 to 8 videos a month. So if there are any other real estate topics that you want to learn about, let me know and I'll try to cover them because I need content ideas. But for now, I guess I'll catch you on the next episode of Robuilt. I don't know, did that end, was that an anticlimactic ending? I usually have a spiel, but basically like, comment, subscribe, book a consultation if you want to talk one-on-one in Zoom. Follow me on Instagram. I post there as much as I can about my day-to-day Airbnb, tiny house shenanigans, and everything in between. But yeah, and thank you so much to Earth Bean Coffee for sponsoring this video and believing in the Robuilt channel. Really does mean the world to me. All right, my raw builders, don't forget that you can get 15% off of your order at Earth Bean Coffee by using the promo code ROBUILT. It would mean the world to me if you supported this small business because I dig what they're doing, and I like what they're doing, and they're sustainable, and they're awesome, and their coffee is freaking good. So now, that's it. I'll catch you on the next episode of Robuilt. All right, see ya.